Shalom. One of the most important pieces of literature is Genesis chapter 22, the binding of Isaac. So let's take a close look at it. In order to do this, you really should have a Bible in front of you. And I want to look at the text the way our rabbis would, doing exegesis and homiletics. It begins by saying, sometime afterward. Well, after what? You have to go back to the last chapter and figure out why the Torah would bother saying that. What is it in context to? God put Abraham to the test. Well, why would God do that? What kind of test? In fact, the Talmud says that Abraham had 10 tests, including the one from the chapter before where God told him to leave his home. And what is God testing exactly? And does God want Abraham to pass or fail the test? Does he want him to argue with God like he did when God said he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Because it doesn't look like Abraham argues with him at all when he says, kill his son. He said to him, Abraham. And Abraham said, Hineni, here I am. That word is used often. It's a very important word of existential identification. In fact, we just had it in the Isaiah prophetic portion for the week of Shoftim in the middle of the book of Deuteronomy just recently. It's used by several of the great leaders. So he says, here I am. And then he says, take your son. Okay, well, he had two sons. He had Ishmael and Isaac. So according to the rabbis, Abraham said, well, I have two sons, because he knew what was coming. He was trying to stall. So then God says, your favored one. And Abraham says, well, they're both favored. And then he says, take Isaac, okay, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on the heights that I will point out to you. Now, Mount Moriah, that is a very important mountain. That's where the Dome of the Rock is, where the Holy Temple was. And Abraham does not argue, in the text here anyway. So that's surprising. Why not? So early the next morning, he got up very early the next morning, and he sat on his ass, and he took with him two servants. Now, who were they? Well, according to tradition, they were perhaps Ishmael and Eliezer. Ishmael, his other son, as that says servant, and Eliezer, his servant, who goes later to find a wife for Isaac. And he split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place of which God had told him. Now, on the third day, Abraham... So what happened the others 2 days? They're just walking along. Doesn't say what conversation took place. Imagine. Now, it also doesn't tell us that Abraham mentioned anything to Sarah. In fact, she dies right after this story. So, probably, according to the Midrash anyway, the rabbis, that a bad angel told her what had happened, and she died hearing the news that her husband took her son to go get killed. And of course, the drama is that Abraham and Sarah waited until they were very, very old to go here to have a son, and now God is saying, go kill that son. So Abraham said to his servants, you stay here, the boy and I will go up there, and we will worship, and we will return to you. Now, was he just trying to put them off, or did he really know that in the end God was not going to go through with this, that Isaac would go along with him? So he took for the wood offering, he put it on Isaac. How's that for drama? And he himself took the firestone and the knife, and the two walked off together. And Isaac said, Father, yes, my son, I see the fire and the wood. Where's the burnt offering? Huh. So Abraham has to lie to him, or maybe he knew that God was not going to go through with this. And he said, God will see to the sheep for his burnt offering, my son. And the two of them walked on together. And they arrived at the place, and Abraham built an altar, and then he laid out the wood. He bound his son Isaac. Now, if you add up the chronology of years, Isaac is 37 years old. It seems like here he's a little boy, but he's 37. So you think a 37-year-old guy is going to just lie down and be killed? So the Midrash says that Isaac says to him, Dad, I know you want to go through with this, and I know God spoke to you and told you to do this, and I don't know why, but I'm 37 and you're very old, so you better tie me really tightly so I don't fight you when that knife comes down, because I would inadvertently probably try and protect myself. So he picked up the knife and he was going to go through with it, and then the angel of the Lord called and said, Abraham, Abraham. Now, why twice? Wouldn't once been enough? And Abraham said, again, Hineni, here I am. Again, Hineni. Do not raise your hand to that boy, do not do anything, for now I know that you fear the Lord, and you have not withheld your son from me. So that was the test. Don't withhold his son. Now, the context of this is that before the Bible, and even during the Bible, people killed their children to serve God. Now, maybe the story is saying don't do it, because God continues to rail against that, and the prophets against Moloch worship, which where they sacrificed their children. So this story is unique. It's not surprising then to the ancient Near East that God would say, kill your son. That's what they did before the Bible. What's surprising here is that God says, don't do it. Maybe that was the test. Maybe Abraham should have argued with him. Maybe that's what God was looking for. Because God never, ever, ever talks to Abraham after this story. So the rabbis argued it both ways. Some thought he passed the test. Some thought he should have argued with God. Okay, so Abraham looks up and his eyes fell upon a ram caught in the thicket by its horn. So that's one of the reasons this is read on Rosh Hashanah. He's caught by the shofar, the horn, out of his ear. So he took it and he sacrificed it. And he named the site Adonai Yireh. And then it says at the end of the story that Abraham then returned to his servants and they departed together for Beersheba. Abraham stayed in Beersheba. What happened to Isaac? It doesn't say that Isaac went back with him. So where did Isaac go? Did Isaac die on that mountain? We don't know really know in the story. Did he, after that story, not be willing to go back with his father? We don't know. Anyway, it's a very interesting way to look at the text. The text begs to be expounded. There's been articles and books written about this few lines. One of the most dramatic and powerful stories in all of literature. A close reading of Genesis 22 from chapter 1, verse 1 through 19.